Hello, welcome to the Berkeley Food Network Pantry Training for New Volunteers. Thank you so much for your interest in supporting Berkeley Food Network through volunteering at our pantry distributions. This training will orient all new volunteers to our pantry programs and is also designed for volunteers returning to our program after a time away. On our agenda is an overview of our staff, a review of the volunteer agreement and how it applies to our pantry programs, information about volunteer safety requirements, a basic outline of what food insecurity is, our program philosophy, information about food at our pantries, an outline of the pantry volunteer roles, and tips for working with our community members and providing excellent customer service. Finally, at the end of the training, you will be given information about how to confirm you have completed the training and how to sign up for shifts. When you volunteer at the 9th Street Pantry, you will be interacting with 4 Berkeley Food Network staff. Angelina Macias-Kraus is our pantry associate and is on site and present for all of the 9th Street pantries. Volunteers who are new to Berkeley Food Network should please sign up for 9th Street pantry shifts before signing up for our mobile pantries. Angelina supports volunteers and coordinates the effort at the 9th Street Pantry. Emma Greenberg-Bell is our programs manager. Emma coordinates all of our direct distributions to our pantries and our home delivery program. Kelly E. Rubin is our programs associate. Key, as he is known, coordinates all of the food allocations to our pantries and makes sure that all of our pantries are running smoothly and have all the resources they need. My name is Perry Hall, and I'm a volunteer and outreach manager, and I will be guiding you through this training. The first thing we want volunteers to be aware of is the volunteer agreement. This is included when you sign up for our Bloomerang scheduling software, as well as in the volunteer handbook. All volunteers are asked to read through the volunteer agreement so that you understand what Berkeley Food Network expects of you, as well as what we expect of ourselves. There are 3 key areas of our volunteer agreement. The first area is that of respect. It's really important that our volunteers and staff respect themselves and others. We also want to make sure that all people who are interacting with Berkeley Food Network understand how to keep safe and healthy boundaries. Finally, volunteers should always conduct themselves professionally. The second key area is that of awareness. We want our volunteers to be aware of several key areas and be interested in raising their awareness about them throughout their volunteer work. The first area of awareness is around bias. We expect volunteers and staff to be aware of any biases they may bring to their volunteer work and to be reflective about how they might affect their work. We also would like volunteers to be mindful of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the work that they do. We also are hoping that volunteers are willing to be self-reflective about their work so that they can continue to grow and learn in our community, and we can grow and learn from each other. Another important area of awareness is that of accountability. We want our volunteers and staff to not only hold themselves accountable, but also to hold each other accountable. This means speaking up when things come up that need to be addressed, and also to be self-reflective and communicative about any areas that we need to do so. Finally, we are wanting our volunteers to understand the basics about food insecurity, which will be included in this training. The third area is that of training. This training will include information about great customer service, trauma-informed service, de-escalation techniques, basic safety information, and how to coordinate with the leads at the night Street Pantry. Here are some best practices for volunteers. You may pause the video at this time to read through them. Now we want to give a framework around what food insecurity is. Food insecurity is the disruption of food intake or eating patterns because of a lack of money and other resources. Hunger is a possible outcome of food insecurity. There are typically 4 areas of food insecurity. High food security, which means you have access to all the food that you need to be healthy. Marginal food security, low food security, and very low food security. When looking at the lower levels of food security, you will see very disrupted eating patterns, a decrease in the quality, variety, desirability, and so forth of food, as well as a decrease in food intake overall. Food insecurity can be influenced by a number of factors. They include income, employment, race, ethnicity, and disability. The most common effects of food insecurity include health complications and illnesses, having to make difficult decisions, such as deciding between paying for food or critical health care, or having to pay for food or rent, etc. Another critical short and long-term effect of food insecurity is damage to children's physical, mental, educational growth, and development. There are many disparities when you look at food insecurity. For example, Black and non-white households are 2 times more likely to be food insecure. This means there may be fewer full-service supermarkets in areas that have higher populations of Black and non-white people. In addition, people with disabilities have limited employment opportunities. They also have health care expenses that may be higher than others, and all of these things reduce their ability to buy food. A food desert is a community that lacks affordable and nutritious food access. This could mean that there are stores with higher food prices, lower quality foods, less variety of foods, or perhaps lack of transportation and or long distances to get to full-service grocery stores. Finally, the effects of COVID-19 are continuing, but the COVID relief funding has not. To understand BFN's program approach and philosophy, we want to make sure volunteers understand that our pantry distributions focus on providing supplemental groceries to those who need it. We are not a full-service grocery store. We simply provide additional food when compared to the other ways that people might get their groceries. We also very much value a farmer's market or grocery store style pantry distribution. This creates a welcoming and calm environment that is familiar and also provides community member choice. This means that our members are able to choose the foods that they would like. This means that our food distributions are less stigmatizing and more dignified, but also reduce food waste. The minimum requirements for our members to receive food are to provide a name. Our general guidelines are that we ask our members to live, work, or study in Alameda County and to visit our pantries once a week. We do ask this of our members, but we do not turn anyone away from food. In addition, all of the personal information that we collect from members is held privately, and we do not share this outside of our organization. The reason that we collect member information is because it supports our data-informed decisions. There have been a dramatic expansion of services, and this requires increased data collection to help us make informed decisions about our allocations and other programmatic choices. We collect information if people are amenable to providing it in addition to their name, such as the number of people in the household, the address and zip code, birth date, and brief demographic information. If our members are not comfortable providing this information, all we require is a unique identifier. This could be a phone number, an address, or a date of birth. Berkeley Food Network is moving towards digital enrollment to relieve the burden on staff, volunteers, and members. For the time being, we still collect information on paper registration forms and enter them into a secure database. The forms are shredded after the information is entered. The food at Berkeley Food Network Pantries has a menu that changes weekly. The menu consists of a protein, shelf-stable items, lots of fresh produce, and other extras, such as bread. The goal is to provide sufficient quantities of each item so that we can be equitable in the distribution of these foods. The goal, again, is to supplement our community members' store-bought groceries. We want to take a moment to explain that BFN has an inventory management system that serves many different programs and many different partner organizations. In addition to our direct distributions or our programs, BFN has 30 partner organizations that receive food from BFN for their own programs. The goal with our inventory management system is to have accurate distribution data to support the sourcing of popular items and to source sufficient amounts of food. If you would like to shop at one of BFN's pantries, we ask that volunteers sign up to get a member card and shop after your shift. It's important that all volunteers follow basic food safety guidelines. This helps to ensure that our food distribution is safe for our members who may be struggling with chronic illness or other health situations. The first important thing to do is to keep food at temperature. This means if an item is frozen, we keep it in the ice chest with the ice blocks. If the item is refrigerated, we keep it at refrigerated temperature, and so forth. We also need to keep food off of the floor. This means if a piece of produce falls onto the floor, we have to compost that item. In addition, any produce or food that is in a box needs to be kept off the floor. You may put it on a pallet, on a table, or on a crate, or on racking, but it should not go directly on the floor for food safety reasons. All volunteers who are handling produce are asked to wear gloves. Please be sure to replace your gloves as needed if they break or if they become contaminated. We also want to make sure that volunteers do not reuse any boxes that have been used to store raw meat. If you see any food with visible molding, please go ahead and compost that item. If it is rotting, you may also compost it. Any other defects with a piece of produce, such as bruising or discoloration, that is less than 25% of that item, may be kept, and members may choose or not choose to take that item. If there is any food that has an open package, we need to provide that to volunteers to take home, but we cannot distribute it to our members. Also, please do not eat during a pantry distribution. To give you an idea of how many people are served by our pantries, we provided the following information. At our mobile pantries, which are out in the neighborhood in Berkeley and Albany, we provide 700 to 800 food assistances a month. At the 9th Street Pantry, which is where you will start your volunteering, we serve 3,500 to 4,000 food assistances each month. This translates into households as follows. At our mobile pantries, we serve 400 unique households each month. And at the 9th Street Pantry, we serve over 1,000 unique households. All volunteers will start volunteering at the 9th Street Pantry. The purpose of this pantry is to provide food to those who need it in the neighborhood surrounding our warehouse. We do know, however, that there are members who come from farther away. Our Member Choice Pantry is designed to have volunteers building community connections with our members, packing their bags, and restocking food shelves while members shop the pantry. The pantry hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 to 3 and 5 to 7. Members line up on 9th Street, starting at the Black Gate here, located at the entry to the pantry ramp. The line breaks across the loading dock to allow free access for vehicles, forklifts, and other pedestrians. One of the goals of the greeters is to help keep our members to one side of the sidewalk close to the building to allow free access of the sidewalk. The line movement goes in this direction, and there's a 9th Street greeter here who helps monitor and supervise the flow of our members. The check-in lead, who's located here inside the welcome room, uses a walkie-talkie to communicate with the greeter to let them know when they can allow 5 more members or families to come in to the welcome room and check in. This means that they walk up this ramp, enter this exterior door, and then come into the welcome room here. In the welcome room, the check-in lead and the check-in support volunteers will scan member cards and also provide forms to new members and provide them with new member cards. The pantry lead member support volunteer will let the check-in lead know when they can send 5 more families into the pantry room. The goal is to not have more than 8 members at a time shopping in the pantry room. Once members are done shopping, they exit the same way they came in. We want to make sure that volunteers are aware of some basic safety information about our space. The exits are documented here on the maps. One where the members enter into the pantry room, one at the loading dock where volunteers enter to come in for their shifts. There's another exit on the university side and another in the community room that will exit out to the parking lot. When you're in the pantry space and the warehouse, please make a note of the exits so that you know how to evacuate the warehouse if needed. In addition, there are fire extinguishers located at many of the doors in the warehouse, as well as at the top of the stairs. We have 2 first aid kits, one at the volunteer check-in station and one over by the sink. Here are the roles that volunteers support in the 9th Street Pantry. The 9th Street Pantry utilizes 2 greeters who work outside on 9th Street and University. This role requires a minimum of 3 pantry shifts, this training, and no lifting is required. The check-in lead works inside the welcome room and requires at least 3 shifts in the check-in support role. This volunteer scans member cards, onboards new members, and otherwise supports members when they come into the welcome room. The check-in support should have done 3 or more shifts in the member support role before signing up for check-in support. These check-in support and check-in lead positions require comfort with using a computer and a scanner. We do provide training, and it is pretty straightforward. In addition, we also have a member support lead. This volunteer needs to be able to lift at least 20 pounds, and they coordinate the member support team. The member support lead communicates with the greeter using the walkie and should have a minimum of 3 pantry shifts before signing up to be lead. The member support volunteers work with the member support lead to provide great customer service to our members. This might mean packing bags, reminding members of our guidelines of items per family, helping to provide help out to vehicles as needed, answering questions about the food provided. The restocking lead requires the ability to lift or co-lift at least 50 pounds. The restocking lead coordinates the restocking team. This person communicates any inventory needs to the pantry associate and requires a minimum of 3 pantry shifts before taking on this lead role. Restockers need to have the ability to lift or co-lift at least 50 pounds and work under the restocking lead to restock all of the shelf-stable items as well as the produce items in the pantry. Our neighborhood pantries work in a very similar way to our 9th Street Pantry. The purpose of these pantries is to reduce geographic barriers to food and nutrition access. Customer service can be divided into 5 sequential steps: to prepare, to greet, to act, to help, and to conclude. What would it look like to prepare or to be prepared to provide good customer service at a pantry? One way is to make sure you're coming into your shift with a positive attitude. Another is to familiarize yourself with the food that's on offer that day. Or you can make sure you know the names of all of your team members. And if you have questions about policies and procedures, to make sure you ask them. What are some ways one can greet members using great customer service? You want to welcome members and use their name if you know it. Speak clearly and use your eye contact. And have a warm and welcoming presence. What would a volunteer's actions be like using great customer service? You would want to act patiently and listen. Be sure not to rush, even if there's a line. Be sure that you're gently placing any food items that you're packing into bags or boxes for members. How can volunteers help members using great customer service? You can answer their questions or name a product while pointing to it. You can offer them help carrying their bags out to their car, or offer to help return the cart for them if you're a greeter. What are some customer service techniques that would help conclude an interaction with a member? Making sure to say goodbye when they leave, making sure that they have felt welcomed and that you see that they're leaving. These are all ways that you can provide great customer service. Now we're going to go over the 9th Street Pantry volunteer roles and their requirements. All 9th Street Pantry volunteer roles require the completion of this training, as well as excellent customer service skills. In the order of the flow of the 9th Street Pantry, we have the following roles. There are 2 greeters who work outside of the warehouse. Greeters require this training and are responsible for managing the member line, supporting with any conflict management that may come up, communicating with the check-in team in the welcome room, and using the walkie-talkie to communicate with staff as needed. To be a greeter, we ask that volunteers complete a minimum of 3 pantry shifts, as well as this training. The check-in lead is in the welcome room and manages all members in the welcome room. The check-in lead will check in all returning members, sign up new members for cards, enter new member information into the client voice database as is possible, and admits members into the pantry room. The check-in lead also communicates with staff about any issues with the system or with members. The check-in lead communicates with the member support lead to ensure good customer service and a positive flow of our members. The requirements for check-in lead include comfortable with our client voice software, excellent customer service skills, a warm and welcoming presence, and again, 3 or more shifts in the member support role. To be a check-in lead, volunteers must first shadow staff or an experienced lead. Check-in support volunteers is a great position for volunteers comfortable with computers and interested in becoming a check-in lead or providing check-in support. These volunteers should volunteer at least 3 shifts in the member support role and will need to be trained by a staff or another volunteer on using the client voice software. The member support lead coordinates the member support team in the pantry room, welcomes members into the pantry room and informs them about any available produce items, communicates with restockers as needed, helps to orient new members to the pantry room, and if possible, helps pantry members carry their bags and boxes to their cars. The member support volunteers work under the member support lead to provide great customer service and to answer any questions that members may have, as well as supporting members with filling their bags and carrying their boxes and bags out. The restocking lead coordinates the entire restocking team, communicates any inventory needs to the pantry associate, and has had at least 3 pantry shifts in any role. The restocking lead coordinates with 2 other restockers who all should be able to lift or co-lift at least 50 pounds. The roles at our neighborhood pantries are much the same, and the purpose is also very similar. The goals with our neighborhood pantries are to reduce geographic barriers to food and nutrition access, and to deliver food to community sites, set up the pantry, and distribute the food. Here is a map of our 5 public pantries and our 5 private pantries. The pink icons indicate our private pantries, which are mostly at senior housing communities, and the 5 public pantries are indicated with the blue icons and the green icon for the Ninth Street Pantry. These are open to the public and anyone may attend. We host pantries at a rotating Berkeley Unified School District elementary or middle school once a month throughout the school year. These pantries are staffed by volunteers through the Berkeley Public Schools Fund. The roles at our neighborhood pantry for volunteers are very similar to the Ninth Street Pantry. There will always be a check-in lead. There will always be a pantry lead who drives the van as well as coordinates the effort of the team. And there will be member support volunteers. The number of member support volunteers depends on the size of the pantry. These pantries require flexibility and team coverage, and we always need drivers. If you're interested in becoming a driver for one of our neighborhood pantries, please reach out to the volunteer and outreach manager. Volunteers are expected to know what food is on offer each day, not just at their station, and to connect their members to the next volunteer. We're always trying to cross-train volunteers to help optimize our staffing and flexibility as much as possible. Once you've done 3 shifts at the Ninth Street Pantry, please reach out to the volunteer and outreach manager to find out more about signing up for our neighborhood pantries. In order for our volunteers to be successful at our pantries, we want to make sure that our volunteers are coming to their shifts in a way that allows them to practice empathy and non-judgment. We want to make sure that volunteers give their undivided attention and listen carefully to our members. To do that, you can restate and paraphrase what a member may have said to you and ask questions to clarify as needed. It's really important that our volunteers keep an awareness of the power and privilege dynamics and the perceptions of these in our pantries. One question that we are always asking ourselves, and we hope our volunteers are also doing, is how might we promote justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion at our pantries? Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion are important concepts in our work at Berkeley Food Network. All of these terms relate to food justice. Food justice is a holistic and structural view of the food system that sees healthy food as a human right and addresses structural barriers to that right. People of color are the most severely impacted by hunger, poor food access, diet-related illness, and other problems with the food system. What do we mean when we use the term diversity? Diversity is like a puzzle where all of the pieces come in a variety of different shapes, sizes, and colors. Inclusion is about the practices, actions, and steps we take to make sure all of the pieces fit, belong, and are valued. Equity is different than equality. Equality is about the equal and exact division, whereas equity refers to the qualities of justice and fairness. When relating to our pantry members, we want to do so from a strength-based space versus an othering framework. BFN's pantry model works to promote these values through its member choice pantries, low barrier food access, by filling gaps in the food system, by supporting members who don't speak English or for whom English is not their preferred language as much as possible, and by prioritizing food that is culturally appropriate whenever possible. When interacting with members, it's important to always remember that we are in a customer service role. Members are coming to our pantries out of necessity and need. Therefore, it's very important to interact with our members with dignity, respect, compassion, and empathy. Please be sure to greet our members warmly and make eye contact. Our goal is to create a calm and welcoming environment. It's helpful to turn up the volume and project when speaking with members. Use positive body language and smile. And when a member is leaving, you can say goodbye or connect them with the next volunteer in the pantry space. Customer service can be divided into 5 sequential steps: to prepare, to greet, to act, to help, and to conclude. What would it look like to prepare or to be prepared to provide good customer service at a pantry? One way is to make sure you're coming into your shift with a positive attitude. Another is to familiarize yourself with the food that's on offer that day. Or you can make sure you know the names of all of your team members. And if you have questions about policies and procedures, to make sure you ask them. What are some ways one can greet members using great customer service? You want to welcome members and use their name if you know it. Speak clearly and use your eye contact. And have a warm and welcoming presence. What would a volunteer's actions be like using great customer service? You would want to act patiently and listen. Be sure not to rush, even if there's a line. Be sure that you're gently placing any food items that you're packing into bags or boxes for members. How can volunteers help members using great customer service? You can answer their questions or name a product while pointing to it. You can offer them help carrying their bags out to their car, or offer to help return the cart for them if you're a greeter. What are some customer service techniques that would help conclude an interaction with a member? Making sure to say goodbye when they leave. Making sure that they have felt welcomed and that you see that they're leaving. These are all ways that you can provide great customer service. Customer service is a good skill set for all areas of life. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, "the customer is always right." What we mean when we say this is that our goal is to ensure that customers have a positive experience as much as possible and that they feel they are well served. The goal is to prepare volunteers with techniques should an escalation arise. Escalations are very rare in the night Street Pantry and our mobile pantries. The atmosphere is generally very friendly and relaxed, although busy. Staff are always available to step in should an escalation arise with a member or another volunteer. Many of our volunteers are also trained in trauma-informed member support and de-escalation techniques should something come up. What we want our pantry volunteers to understand is that utilizing de-escalation skills is a vital part of any customer service training. In addition, food assistance organizations provide essential customer service to a broad population, some of whom may have anger management and mental health challenges. Although de-escalation will not always work, it can often lead to a supportive and positive communication, and it can prevent communication from escalating any further and help to calm both people down who may be in an escalated state. Not only do we support our members by using de-escalation techniques, but when we use them for ourselves, we can remain calm and centered no matter how others around us are behaving. This can help with morale and help to prevent burnout. Trauma-informed member support is important for our volunteers to learn because many individuals who are experiencing food insecurity are experiencing trauma, because food insecurity is a form of trauma. What do we mean when we use the term trauma? Trauma results from an event or circumstance that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and well-being. Trauma increases the risk of escalation, puts the body in a high state of alert for danger, and shuts down parts of the brain responsible for planning and logical thinking. Again, trauma is based on the experience of the individual, and everyone responds to trauma differently. Trauma responses can be driven by many factors, such as culture or personality, and all humans are programmed to identify threats and to protect ourselves, even over the good things that can be happening around us. It's a protective mechanism that ensures our survival. We want volunteers to learn how to recognize common trauma responses in others and ourselves, and to utilize de-escalation techniques whenever needed. What are some examples of trauma responses? You're probably familiar with the fight, flight, freeze response. Fawn is often included as well. These responses are based in our nervous system response, so that when our brain identifies something that may be dangerous, we have these go-to responses that will be prompted. They are subconscious for the most part, and they are there to protect us, and they are good things. However, sometimes if we have experienced a lot of trauma, or we get stuck in the trauma response for some reason, we see these behaviors showing up more often. Culture and personality also affects this, so it's not exclusively about trauma. So the first trauma response we'll look at is the fight response. We think of this as being reactive. What are some examples of the fight trauma response? This can be a reactive response, demanding, defensive, angry, accusing, and threatening. What about the flight response? This might be shown as withdrawn, anxious, avoidant, fearful, leaving suddenly, or isolating oneself. The freeze response looks more like disconnecting, feeling helpless, being unresponsive, having a hard time making decisions, being panicked, or feeling foggy. And the fawn response is when, in response to trauma, people may become very people-pleasing, codependent, deferential, have trouble setting boundaries, avoiding conflict, or being overly apologetic. When we think of escalation, which one of these trauma responses would be most involved? If you guess the fight response, that is typically the response most often involved in an escalation. Again, we want to frame this behavior as a typical and normal response to the experience of trauma. Our work is to try to find ways to alter what is happening in the interaction. Also, it's important to remember that there are cultural and individual experiences that may come into play. It can be that members who become escalated have interacted with a lot of systems that could not be trusted, including professionals who may even look like a staff member or a volunteer who they are interacting with, and they become escalated as a result. So we want to learn to understand and recognize the physical, emotional, psychological response of trauma and what the fight response looks like, and to understand that there's probably a lot of legitimacy to a member not trusting what is happening in that moment. The extent of trauma exposure a person has can be directly correlated to the intensity of their trauma response. And a person can be triggered or re-traumatized by events that seem commonplace to others. And stressful situations can often activate a member's trauma response. So again, we want volunteers to understand the physiology of the fight, flight, freeze response, understand the do's and don'ts of positive communication, find ways to remind members of our procedures as needed while supporting their experience, to use new skills and techniques to address challenging behaviors and emotional states, and to learn specific interventions for different scenarios. Also, we want our volunteers to know when to ask staff for support and understand that vicarious trauma and ways to mitigate its impact on staff and volunteers is also something to consider. So most people arrive in new situations at their baseline, where they're exhibiting calm behavior and they feel at ease. This would have normal breathing, etc. Most people who are not in an escalated state are at their baseline. If something comes up and triggers one of our members, or perhaps they already are triggered when they come into the pantry, such as somebody could be tired, hungry, bored, frustrated, maybe they had some bad news before they came into the pantry, such as they are short on food or they are not going to make their rent. We want to look for signs that somebody might be in a triggered state and find ways to make their experience in the pantry more enjoyable. That will help them return to a baseline calm behavior. If somebody is heading towards an escalation, they may have wanted eggs, but we didn't have any that day, etc. You'll see more physiological changes, more evidence of being upset, signs of agitation, heavier, faster breathing, etc. So one thing that you can do is model coping strategies, use humor appropriately, ask if they want a cup of water or to sit down, ask them if you can pack their bags for them and they take a break. You'll be able to think of ways that seem appropriate in the moment to help our members return back down to baseline, or you can ask for help from another volunteer or staff. Sometimes an escalation can turn into a crisis. Often we can help someone in the escalation state and help them to avoid the crisis state and go straight to the de-escalation and stabilization. However, if somebody's in a crisis state, it could be that they're physically acting out or harming themselves. What you want to do is focus on safety. Give them space, stay calm, if appropriate, provide reassurance, and get a staff member to help. After somebody comes out of the crisis state and they begin to de-escalate, you can help them by focusing on calming strategies, not talking about what happened, simply calming down and modeling being calm yourself. Stabilization is where we hope to return after an escalated state, where members are calm in both their mental and physical states and are more grounded in the reality of what's happening around them. This can be a time where we can support people with making sure they don't re-enter the escalation and focus on reflection and how to be grounded and calm. It's really important that we monitor our own response, maintain calm behavior, use non-threatening body language, and so forth to help someone through a crisis. If you're finding that this is too challenging, be sure to take a break and ask for help from another volunteer or a staff member. The first 5 seconds of an escalation are really critical for helping it to resolve quickly. Take a breath. Remember, it's not personal. Slow down. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Move the conflict somewhere more private. And give the member your full attention. For the safety of our volunteers, if a member is escalating in an interaction with you or another volunteer, it can be best practice to have the volunteer take a break from the pantry until the member has finished going through the pantry or until the situation has resolved. Please inform a staff member as much as possible. And remember, these are great life skills that can be used in many other situations. What are some common de-escalation techniques? Trauma-informed care means that we recognize that members may be easily triggered due to chronic trauma that they are experiencing in their lives. We want to have awareness of differences during conflicts, such as demographic differences between cultures, age, gender, immigration status, and so forth. And also be aware of your own self-perception versus the members' perceptions of volunteers. Conflict can activate fight, flight, or freeze response, and it's important to be able to recognize and de-escalate that in others as well as regulate ourselves. Finally, 90% of all communication is nonverbal. Body language is the most important, then tone of voice, then the actual words that we say, which really are not as important. We emphasize a collaborative approach to communication, where we are working together to find a good solution, using I statements, expressing concern, asking for clarification, stating what you need, and using active listening techniques, and so forth. For your body language, it's important to avoid crossing your arms, staring someone down, using hand gestures that might be perceived as threatening, like pointing fingers, and standing too close or perhaps too far, and also to avoid interrupting. Affirm their concerns as much as possible and try to figure out what they need. In all of your work at our pantries, we want to make sure that you're taking care of yourselves emotionally, physically, and mentally. This means taking breaks when you need them, staying hydrated, and asking for support with lifting. It also means taking space as you need it, self-regulating during stress or overwhelm, stretching, taking deep breaths, drinking water, and asking for support are all great ways to do that. And it's really important to recognize the power and privilege in our interactions at pantries. We also want to recognize the importance of other forms of safety at our pantries for your bodies. All volunteers must wear closed-toe shoes. In addition, we ask volunteers to wear the volunteer safety vests available next to the lockers. Please be very aware of pallet jacks and forklifts in the warehouse space, and always practice safe lifting techniques by lifting with your legs and not with your back. First aid kits are available near the whiteboard and the sink in the warehouse, and please familiarize yourself with the emergency exits as well. Finally, for food safety reasons, please do not eat on the warehouse floor or during our food distributions. As you can see here, the pantry room located on 9th Street is right adjacent to a parking lot that's owned by the City of Berkeley. If there's an emergency evacuation, you're asked to exit the nearest evacuation door, such as the member welcome room entrance or the loading dock. There are also exits in the community room and one on the university side of the building. Once you're outside of the building, please make your way to the evacuation assembly area on the north side of the parking lot at the sidewalk. Here we will take roll to ensure that everyone has evacuated safely. Before signing up for your first 9th Street Pantry shift, we want to make sure that you fill out the training completion form that will be linked at the end of this video. You will also receive an email from Perry inviting you to claim your Bloomerang account. To view available shifts, after you've registered for your Bloomerang account, you will see two opportunities: the mobile and on-site pantries opportunity and the BFN warehouse opportunity. Mobile and on-site pantries contain all of our direct distributions. You may click on this opportunity to sign up for shifts at the 9th Street Pantry. You may want to bookmark the website for signing up for shifts for easier access in the future. You may also click on the scheduling system via the volunteer webpage on the BFN website. Here's a quick overview for using the Bloomerang scheduling system. At the top of the web application, you will see a toolbar. There are several icons that help you navigate through the system. The calendar icon will help you access your opportunities. Again, the mobile pantries and on-site pantry and the BFN warehouse opportunity. If you click on the clock icon, you will see all of the shifts you have signed up to volunteer for. You can click on the sign up for more shifts to access adding new shifts to your schedule. And if you are part of more than one opportunity, you can use the drop-down menu to go back and forth between those two opportunities to sign up for shifts. For easier access to shifts, you may want to filter and select shifts from within an opportunity using the following steps. After you click in the opportunity you wish to volunteer in, you can click on the green Sign Up for More Shifts icon near the top. Unless you want to add yourself to the wait list for a particular shift, turn on Hide Shifts that are full function. If you do add yourself to a wait list, please note that you are not automatically added to a shift when spots become available. If you would like to select many shifts at one time, I recommend that you switch the schedule view from card view to list view on the top right. This will make your view much more compact. You may further filter shifts by using a variety of date options, volunteer role, and shift location options. In the list view, you can check on the checkbox next to the shifts you would like to do. Once they are in your cart, you must click on the Complete Sign Up button at the bottom in order to be added to the shift. Please watch out for email communications from the volunteer manager. You will get a monthly volunteer roundup email with important updates about your volunteer work. In addition, we ask that all volunteers read the volunteer handbook. Thank you so much for your interest in volunteering at the 9th Street Pantry. Please reach out to the volunteer manager if you have questions or if you'd like additional resources. We'd be happy to help you.